In 1890, William Kemmler became the first person to die in the electric chair. It took 8 minutes of electricity coursing through his body, the smell of burning flesh filled the room, and witnesses fled in horror. Yet somehow, this was considered an improvement over what came before. Today, I'm taking you through 7 levels of execution in American history. And by the end, you'll discover why the most humane method we use today might actually be the most terrifying of them all. Level 1. Lethal injection, 1982 to present. So here's where our journey into America's death row begins, with lethal injection, the method we use today. Picture this. A condemned prisoner lies on a medical gurney, an IV in their arm, witnesses watching through glass. 3 drugs flow through their veins in sequence. First, they fall unconscious, then their muscles paralyze. Finally, their heart stops. The whole process takes about 7 minutes. Sounds peaceful, right? Well, that's exactly what Timothy McVeigh experienced in 2001. Remember the Oklahoma City bombing? That massive explosion that destroyed a federal building? McVeigh parked a truck loaded with explosives outside, walked away, and detonated it. In seconds, 168 people were dead. 19 of them were children in the building's daycare center, some as young as 3 months old. The nation watched as rescue workers pulled tiny bodies from the rubble. When McVeigh's execution day arrived, he actually requested lethal injection. Strapped to the gurney, he looked directly at the witnesses, including survivors and victims' families, and quoted a poem. "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." The drugs flowed. 4 minutes later, he was gone. Everyone who watched said it looked like he simply went to sleep. But here's where things get dark. Clayton Lockett's 2014 execution was supposed to go the same way. This man had done something unthinkable. He shot 19-year-old Stephanie Neiman twice with a shotgun, then watched his accomplices bury her alive. She was still breathing when the dirt covered her face. His punishment should have been straightforward. Instead, it became a nightmare. The medical team spent an hour searching for a vein. They tried both arms, nothing. Both legs, nothing. Both feet, still nothing. Finally, desperately, they inserted the needle into his groin. When they started the drugs, something went horribly wrong. Lockett's body bucked against the restraints. His head jerked back. He mumbled, "Oh man," over and over. After 15 minutes of writhing, he tried to rise off the gurney. Officials panicked and closed the curtains. Behind that curtain, Lockett continued convulsing for another 28 minutes before finally dying of a heart attack. Then came Dennis McGuire in Ohio, same year. He'd raped and murdered Joy Stewart, who was 7 months pregnant. Ohio couldn't get the normal drugs anymore. European companies refused to sell them for executions. So they tried something new, an experimental cocktail nobody had used before. For 26 minutes, McGuire gasped like a fish out of water. His children, watching from the witness room, saw their father's fists clench so tight his knuckles went white. He made snoring, gurgling sounds they'd never forget. You see, something strange happened around 2010. Drug companies started saying, "We make medicine to save lives, not end them." Suddenly, states couldn't buy execution drugs. They tried everything: sketchy compound pharmacies, expired drugs, even illegally imported supplies. Some executions took 2 hours. Others left prisoners gasping for air for 45 minutes. Despite all these horror stories, lethal injection sits at level 1 on our scale. Why? Because when it works, and it usually does, death appears medical, clean, almost gentle. But stick around, because what comes next makes even these botched injections look merciful. In level 2, we'll meet prisoners who watched their own death approaching as a visible cloud of gas, fully conscious as they began to suffocate. Level 2, gas chamber, 1924 to 1999. Now we descend to level 2, the gas chamber. Picture a prisoner strapped to a metal chair inside a sealed octagonal room. Below his feet, there's a bowl of acid waiting. He knows what's coming. He can see witnesses watching through the windows. Then he hears it, the lever being pulled. Pellets drop into the acid, and a cloud of hydrogen cyanide gas starts rising toward his face. He can actually see death approaching. This is how Carroll Chessman died in 160, and his execution changed everything. Here's what makes his story fascinating. Chessman wasn't even a killer. He was the red light bandit, a man who would flash a red light to pull over couples in lovers' lanes. then rob and assault them. Horrible crimes, yes, but today he'd get prison time, not death. But in 1948 California, kidnapping with bodily harm meant the gas chamber. For 12 years on death row, Chessman became a celebrity. He wrote best-selling books, taught himself law, and filed appeal after appeal. The world watched. Everyone from Albert Einstein to Billy Graham pleaded for his life. On execution day, reporters packed the witness room. Chessman made them a promise. "I'll keep my eyes open and nod if it hurts." The pellets dropped. The gas rose. Chessman initially held his breath, a natural instinct when you see poison gas coming for you. Then he deliberately inhaled deeply. His head snapped back violently. True to his word, he nodded vigorously at the witnesses. Yes, it hurt. He nodded again and again before the convulsions started. For 9 minutes, reporters watched him twitch and struggle. One said it was like watching someone drown in slow motion, except they were drowning in poison air. Then there's Barbara Graham, whose 1955 execution inspired a Hollywood movie. She and 2 accomplices had broken into an elderly widow's house looking for money. When Mabel Monahan said she didn't have any, they beat her to death. Graham specifically had pistol-whipped the old woman until her skull cracked. In the gas chamber, Graham's tough exterior cracked. As guards strapped her in, she begged for a blindfold. "I don't want to have to look at people." The warden, trying to comfort her, said she wouldn't feel pain. Graham shot back, "How would you know? How many times have you been gassed?" When the gas hit her, Graham fought hard. Her face turned purple, then black. Her eyes bulged. She strained against the straps so violently that witnesses could hear the leather creaking. It took her several minutes to die, and every second was visible to those watching. But nothing compares to Walter Legrand's 1999 execution, the last time America used the gas chamber. Legrand and his brother had robbed a bank in Arizona. When the bank manager couldn't open the safe, they stabbed him 24 times with a letter opener. Legrand actually chose the gas chamber over lethal injection to prove a point, that it was cruel and unusual punishment. He proved it right. For 18 agonizing minutes, Legrand thrashed and gasped. His face went from red to purple to blue. Witnesses could see him mouthing, "I can't breathe," over and over. His body convulsed so violently that officials worried he might break the restraints. When he finally died, Arizona officials were so disturbed they retired the gas chamber forever. You see, what makes the gas chamber truly terrifying isn't just the pain, it's the psychology. You're fully conscious, watching death creep toward you as a visible cloud. Your body's most basic instinct is to hold your breath, but you know that's just delaying the inevitable. When you finally have to inhale, you're choosing to breathe in your own death. The gas chamber ranks at level 2 because while it was sold as scientific and painless, the reality was a fully conscious person fighting against suffocation for up to 20 minutes. But if you think watching someone slowly suffocate is disturbing, wait until level 3, where we meet Old Sparky, that literally cooked people from the inside out, sometimes setting them on fire while they were still alive. Level 3, electric chair 1890 to present. This is the most infamous execution device in American history. The electric chair. They called it Old Sparky, and once you hear what it does to the human body, you'll understand why witnesses often fled the room in horror. Here's how it works. Prisoners are strapped to a wooden chair with leather restraints around their chest, arms, and legs. They shave their heads and attach a metal electrode with a wet sponge. Another electrode goes on their leg. Then comes 2,000 volts of electricity, enough to power hundreds of homes, shooting through their bodies. In theory, they're unconscious instantly. In reality, well, that's where things get nightmarish. William Kemmler has the dubious honor of being the first. August 6, 1890. Kemmler had killed his common-law wife Tilly with a hatchet, struck her 22 times after a drunken argument about another woman. The state of New York decided he'd be perfect to test their new humane execution machine. Strapped into the chair at Auburn Prison, Kemmler was surprisingly calm. "Take your time," he told the nervous guards. "I'm in no hurry." They threw the switch. For 17 seconds, electricity coursed through him. Then they turned it off, thinking he was dead. But Kemmler's chest was still moving. He was breathing. "He's alive!" a witness shouted. The room erupted in panic. They cranked up the generator again, this time for over a minute. Kemmler's body thrashed so violently, the leather straps groaned. Blood vessels burst under his skin. His hair and flesh began to burn. The smell was so terrible that witnesses ran for the door. 8 minutes after they started, Kemmler was finally dead. One disgusted reporter wrote, "They could have done better with an axe." Fast forward to 1953, the height of Cold War paranoia. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were about to die for passing atomic bomb secrets to the Soviets. Whether they were guilty or scapegoats is still debated, but their execution became the most watched in history. Julius went first. 3 jolts of electricity, and he was gone. But Ethel? After the standard 3 jolts, doctors checked. Her heart was still beating. The executioner, Joseph Francel, was shocked. He'd thrown the switch on over 300 executions. This had never happened. They strapped her back in. 2 more massive jolts. Smoke poured from her head. Finally, after 5 rounds of electricity, Ethel Rosenberg was dead. Witnesses said the smell of her burning flesh stayed in their clothes for days. Then there's Ted Bundy, the serial killer who became a household name. He'd murdered at least 30 young women.
Steadfastly and diligently dealt with, I think successfully, with the love of God. And yet it's reopened that, and I felt the pain, and I felt the horror again of all that. And I can only hope that those who I've harmed, those who I've caused so much grief, even if they don't believe my expression of sorrow and remorse, will believe what I'm saying now, that there is loose in their towns and their communities people like me today whose dangerous impulses are being fueled day in and day out by violence in the media in its various forms, particularly sexualized violence.
Pretty college students with long dark hair, just like his ex-girlfriend. He'd torture them, kill them, then sometimes return to their bodies days later. When Florida finally strapped him into Old Sparky in 1989, crowds outside the prison celebrated with signs reading, "Burn, Bundy, burn." At 7:06 a.m., 2,000 volts hit Bundy. His fists clenched so hard they turned white. His whole body went rigid. Steam rose from the electrode on his leg. His flesh was literally cooking. 2 minutes later, he was dead. But here's what haunted the witnesses: the smell. One said it was like burnt bacon mixed with copper pennies. It lingered in the death chamber for hours. But sometimes, Old Sparky turned execution into horror show. Jesse Tefero, 1990. The prison used a synthetic sponge instead of a natural one on the head electrode. When they threw the switch, 6-inch flames shot from Tefero's head. His face mask caught fire. For 4 minutes, flames kept erupting while officials kept applying more electricity. Witnesses said it looked like something from a nightmare. You see, the electric chair doesn't just kill, it cooks you from the inside. The electricity causes every muscle to contract at once, sometimes so violently that bones break. Your blood literally boils. Your internal organs shut down one by one. Your brain tissue heats up to the point where it starts to melt. And despite all this violence happening inside your body, if everything goes right, you're supposedly unconscious in a fraction of a second. The electric chair ranks at level 3 because while it's faster than suffocation when it works properly, the sheer brutality of what electricity does to the human body is undeniable. Witnesses consistently described it as the most violent thing they'd ever seen. But believe it or not, Old Sparky was actually an improvement over what came before. At level 4, we'll meet the method that could either kill you in seconds or leave you dancing at the end of a rope for half an hour. Level 4. Hanging. Colonial era to 1996. Hanging has been America's execution method for over 200 years. Here's how it's supposed to work. The prisoners stand on a trap door with a noose around their neck. The door opens, they fall, and the sudden stop snaps their neck. Instant death. But here's the problem. Get the calculations wrong by just a few inches, and instead of a broken neck, they get slow strangulation that can last up to 45 minutes. The most famous mass hanging in American history happened on July 7, 1865. 4 people would die for conspiring to kill President Abraham Lincoln. Among them was Mary Surratt, who ran the boarding house where John Wilkes Booth and his conspirators planned the assassination. She maintained her innocence, claiming she had no idea what the men were planning in her home. It didn't matter. That sweltering July afternoon, soldiers led all 4 conspirators to the gallows. Mary Surratt could barely walk. She was terrified. The executioner placed the noose around her neck, and she begged one last time, "Please don't let me fall." Those were her last words. The trap opened. But here's what the crowd of witnesses saw. Lewis Powell, the muscular Confederate soldier who had tried to stab the Secretary of State to death, didn't die quickly. His powerful neck wouldn't break. For 5 full minutes, his body convulsed and twisted at the end of the rope while hundreds watched. Mary Surratt and the others took several minutes to stop twitching. The crowd, expecting instant death, was horrified by the prolonged struggle. Jump forward to 1936, Owensboro, Kentucky. This would be America's last public hanging, and it turned into something unthinkable. Rainey Bethea had raped and murdered a 70-year-old woman in her own home, strangling her with her own jewelry. His execution drew over 20,000 spectators, more people than lived in the entire town. Vendors sold hot dogs and lemonade. Parents brought their children. People climbed trees and stood on rooftops for a better view. When the trap dropped, Bethea's neck didn't break. For 14 endless minutes, he slowly strangled while the crowd pushed forward, trying to get closer. Some people actually tried to grab pieces of the death hood as souvenirs while Bethea was still dying. Children were lifted onto shoulders to see better. The spectacle was so disturbing that Kentucky banned public executions the very next day. One official said it was like a carnival of death. But the most grotesque hanging? That was Black Jack Ketchum in New Mexico, 1901. Ketchum was a train robber who'd gotten fat in prison, gained nearly 50 pounds eating jail food while awaiting execution. Nobody thought to recalculate the drop distance for his new weight. When the trap opened and Ketchum fell, the force was so extreme that it ripped his head completely off his body. His head rolled across the platform while his body fell through, spraying blood everywhere. Witnesses screamed and fled. A photographer captured the horrific scene, but newspapers refused to print it. Then we have Wesley Allen Dodd, who specifically chose hanging for his 1993 execution in Washington state. This child killer wanted to die the same way he'd murdered his youngest victim, a 4-year-old boy he'd hanged in a closet. Prison officials hadn't performed a hanging since 1963. They had to dig out old manuals, practice with sandbags, calculate drop distances. When the moment came, Dodd dropped through the trap and died in about 2 minutes. But witnesses never forgot the sound. The bang of the trapdoor, the crack of the rope going taut, and then the creaking as the body swayed back and forth. You see, hanging seems simple, but it's actually incredibly complex. Calculate the drop too short, and the person slowly strangles. Too long, and you might decapitate them. The weight of the person, the thickness of their neck, the type of rope, get any variable wrong, and a quick death turns into a prolonged nightmare. One prison warden admitted they basically guessed half the time and hoped for the best. Hanging sits at level 4 because while it was meant to be instant and bloodless, the reality was often slow strangulation or, worse, decapitation. The margin for error was enormous, and when it went wrong, everyone watching knew it. But as brutal as hanging could be, at level 5 we encounter something even more violent. A method where death comes from multiple bullets tearing through your chest while you're fully conscious, watching rifles aimed at your heart. Level 5. Firing Squad 1608 to 2010. Level 5 takes us to the firing squad, and this one's going to surprise you. Picture this scene. A condemned prisoner sits strapped to a chair, a white paper target pinned directly over their heart. 30 feet away, 5 rifles point through slots in a curtain. The person in that chair can't see the shooters, but knows they're there. In seconds, 4 bullets will tear through their chest. One rifle has a blank, so each shooter can tell themselves maybe they didn't fire the fatal shot. But for the person in that chair, they're fully conscious, watching those rifle barrels, knowing exactly what's coming. Gary Gilmore brought the firing squad back from the dead in 1977. For 10 years, America hadn't executed anyone. The Supreme Court had banned it. Then they reversed their decision, and Gilmore became the first to die. Here's what makes his story incredible. He actually fought to be executed, not against it. Gilmore was a career criminal who'd spent most of his adult life behind bars. In July 1976, just 3 months after being paroled, he went on a senseless killing spree in Utah. First, he walked into a gas station and ordered the young attendant, Max Jensen, to lie face down in the bathroom. Jensen was a newlywed with an infant daughter. He cooperated completely, gave Gilmore the money, got on the floor. Gilmore shot him twice in the head anyway. The next night, Gilmore robbed a motel. He forced the manager, Benny Bushnell, a young father, to lie down behind the counter. Again, Bushnell had already given him the cash. Didn't matter. Gilmore executed him too. 2 innocent men dead for a grand total of $475. When Utah said they'd execute him, Gilmore essentially said thank you. When lawyers tried to appeal, he fired them. When his mother begged him to fight for his life, he refused. He wanted to die. On January 17, 1977, prison guards strapped him to a chair in an abandoned warehouse. A priest gave him last rites. When asked for final words, Gilmore looked at the priest and said 3 words that would become infamous. "Let's do it." 5 volunteer officers stood behind that curtain, rifles loaded and ready. The countdown began. Then, crack, 4 rifles fired simultaneously. 4 bullets punched through Gilmore's chest and heart. Blood immediately spread across his white shirt like spilled ink. His head dropped forward. Within 2 minutes, the doctor pronounced him dead. Quick, violent, but efficient. John Albert Taylor thought he'd get the same quick death in 1996. This child killer had done the unthinkable. He'd kidnapped 11-year-old Charla King from a carnival, took her to a remote cabin, raped her, then strangled her with a telephone cord. Given the choice between lethal injection and firing squad, Taylor chose the bullets. He thought it would be faster, cleaner. Sitting in that same chair where Gilmore died, Taylor looked at Charla's family and said, "I'm sorry." The rifles fired. Blood soaked through his white jumpsuit instantly. But something was wrong. Taylor's clenched fists slowly relaxed. His chest kept rising and falling. For nearly 4 agonizing minutes, he bled out while everyone watched. The shots had hit him, but not perfectly in the heart. He essentially bled to death in slow motion, conscious for who knows how long, strapped to that chair. The last firing squad execution in America happened in 2010. Ronnie Lee Gardner. This guy was already serving life for murder when he tried to escape during a court hearing. He shot lawyer Michael Burdell in the face, killing him instantly while the man was just doing his job. When Utah offered Gardner the choice, he picked the firing squad, saying, "I lived by the gun, I'll die by the gun." They sat him in the chair, placed a hood over his head, pinned the target to his chest. His last words, "I done this all to myself." The rifles cracked. Blood instantly soaked through his dark jumpsuit, spreading like a wet shadow. Unlike Taylor, Gardner's execution was textbook. His breathing turned ragged, then stopped. 2 minutes total, but witnesses said what haunted them wasn't the speed, it was the sheer violence of it. The blood pooling under the chair. The way his body jerked backward when the bullets hit. The undeniable reality that the state had just shot a man to death. Here's what's fascinating about the firing squad. It's actually one of the most reliable execution methods ever used. 4 bullets to the heart cause massive trauma, catastrophic blood loss, and usually death in under 2 minutes. It's faster than the gas chamber, more certain than lethal injection. So why does it rank at level 5? Because there's no disguising what it is. No medical procedure, no scientific apparatus, just the raw, primitive act of shooting someone until they die. The violence is immediate, visible, and impossible to sanitize. But if you think shooting someone is as brutal as execution gets, you're not prepared for what's coming. At level 6, we encounter a method so savage it seems impossible that it happened in America. Imagine having every major bone in your body methodically broken with an iron bar while you're fully conscious, then being left on display to die slowly over days. Level 6. Breaking on the wheel. Now, we descend into territory so dark most people don't even know it happened in America. Level 6. Breaking on the wheel. Imagine a large wagon wheel laid flat, a person tied to it, arms and legs stretched along the spokes, an executioner standing over them with an iron bar. What happens next is almost too brutal to describe. In 1705, a slave named Mark killed his master in New Jersey. The colonial authorities decided hanging wasn't enough. They needed to send a message that would terrify every other slave into submission. They tied Mark to a cartwheel in the town square. The executioner started with his legs. Crack! The iron bar shattered the shin bones, then the other leg, then the thighs, then the arms. 8 major bones, broken methodically while Mark screamed and remained fully conscious. But here's the truly sadistic part. They were careful not to kill him. After breaking all his limbs, they wove his shattered arms and legs through the wheel's spokes, threading his broken body through the holes like rope. Then they hoisted the wheel up on a pole for everyone to see. Mark lived for 2 more days. 2 days exposed to the elements, his broken body contorted into an impossible shape. Birds pecked at him. People walked by and stared. He begged for water, for death. Neither came. The authorities wanted everyone to watch him die slowly as a warning. French Louisiana used a similar method in 1730 when a slave was accused of plotting rebellion, just planning it, not even doing it. Their executioner delivered 11 precise blows, 1 for each major bone. The final strike to the chest was supposed to be merciful, ending it quickly. Instead, it often just collapsed the lungs, leaving the victim to suffocate slowly. Witnesses said the sound of bones breaking was like trees snapping in a storm, except trees don't scream. The wheel wasn't just execution, it was torture as public theater. The broken body became a warning that could last for days, sometimes left up until it rotted away. This method sits at level 6 because it represents the complete abandonment of humanity. There was no pretense of justice, just suffering as spectacle. Even colonial authorities eventually realized this was too savage. By the 1750s, the wheel disappeared from America entirely. But unbelievably, we haven't hit rock bottom yet. At level 7, we find a method so horrific that victims would beg for the wheel instead. Imagine being burned alive, your skin blistering, your flesh charring, while hundreds watch and cheer. Level 7. Burning at the stake. Finally, we reach level 7. The absolute worst way to die in American history. Burning at the stake. And I need to warn you, this is disturbing on a level that's hard to comprehend. The condemned would be chained to a wooden post, surrounded by wood and straw, and burned alive while crowds gathered to watch. Not quickly, not mercifully. Slowly, starting at the feet, moving upward while the person remained conscious. In 1681, an enslaved woman named Mary was burned alive in Massachusetts. Her crime? She allegedly set fire to her master's house and barn. Now think about this. She was accused of destroying property, so they destroyed her in the most agonizing way possible. They chained Mary to a stake in the town square and started piling wood around her feet. Not too much. They wanted this to last. When they lit the fire, it started small, at her feet. The flames slowly climbed up her legs. Witnesses said Mary confessed to everything, begged for mercy, promised anything if they'd just stop. But the fire kept climbing. Here's what's truly horrific about burning. You don't pass out quickly. The smoke that would normally suffocate you rises up and away in open air. The fire cauterizes blood vessels as it burns, preventing you from bleeding out. You remain conscious, feeling everything, for an impossibly long time. Mary's execution took nearly an hour. 1 full hour of burning alive while the town watched. Some people left when the smell became too much. Witnesses described it as sweet and nauseating, nothing like wood smoke. But most stayed until the end, watching her body char and twist in the flames. In 1708, New York burned a slave named Tom, who was accused of murdering his master's family. Tom swore he was innocent, claimed they'd tortured him until he confessed to crimes he didn't commit. Didn't matter. Hundreds of people showed up to watch him burn. But the executioners made a mistake. They used green wood that burned slowly and unevenly. Tom's death took even longer than planned. His screams were so loud that people blocks away covered their ears. When the wind shifted, the smoke and heat drove the crowd back, but they returned once it cleared, eager to see how much was left of him. The worst came in 1741 during what they called the New York Conspiracy. The city was paranoid about slave rebellions. When fires broke out around town, authorities blamed a massive slave plot, probably imaginary. They burned 13 enslaved people at the stake. Think about that. 13 people burned alive based on paranoia and forced confessions. These weren't somber occasions. They were public festivals. Vendors sold food and drinks. Parents brought children to watch. People paid for better viewing spots. One execution took nearly 2 hours because the fire kept going out on one side, leaving the victim half burned but still alive, begging witnesses to throw more wood on the fire just to end it faster. Here's what made burning the absolute worst execution method. Every other method at least tried to kill you. The wheel broke bones to cause shock. Hanging aimed to break the neck, shooting targeted the heart. But burning was designed to hurt as much as humanly possible for as long as possible. The victim felt their skin blister and pop, their fat melting, their muscles charring, their blood literally boiling in their veins, and they stayed conscious through most of it. One witness to a burning wrote that what haunted him wasn't just the screaming. It was when the screaming stopped, but the person was still alive, their throat too damaged to make sounds anymore, just their mouth opening and closing silently as the flames consumed them. Burning sits at level 7, our most extreme, because it represents the absolute peak of human cruelty. Maximum pain, maximum duration, maximum spectacle. It was torture disguised as justice, sadism disguised as law. By the late 1700s, even the colonists realized this was too much. The practice disappeared from America, but its memory reminds us of what humans are capable of when fear and hatred override humanity. So there you have it, 7 levels of execution in American history, ranked from the supposedly humane to the absolutely barbaric. But here's the thing, this is my ranking based on the research. Maybe you see it differently. Do you agree with this order, or would you rearrange these methods? Which one do you think was actually the most brutal, and which shocked you the most? Comment your own ranking from 1 to 7 below. I'm genuinely curious to see if you'd place them differently. If this dark journey through history opened your eyes, like, share, and hit the subscribe button for more stories. Until next time, stay curious.